11 forgotten so bad it's good horror movies from the 80s. Hello, my name is Christian Aris, and thank you for watching Marvelous Videos. Imagine that it's a long day at work, or a Saturday night party with friends. On one such night, would you want to watch a serious film such as Shawshank Redemption or Schindler's List? Or instead, go for a cheesy flick with some nonsensical plot, mindless action, and acting so amateur that it's funny? Well, we don't know about you, but we'd love a film that is so bad, it's good. In this video, we'll bring you the one-star wonders of the 80s. And to crank it up a notch, we thought we would list some of the best horrors of this pseudo-genre. There are some beautiful things about these movies. Overripe performances, undercooked direction, plus hilarious titles that prepare you for the magnificent junk that awaits. However, the fact that these aren't conventional doesn't mean that they have no value, and that's what raises the fun quotient.
Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin.
Poor girl, come here. Let me ease your mind.
The Dead Pit, 1989. The film starts in an asylum called State Institution for the Mentally Ill, where Dr. Ramsey and Dr. Swan are arguing about the method of treating their patients. Dr. Ramsey is an intelligent but mad doctor who runs diabolical experiments on his patients. He attempts to kill the good old Dr. Swan, who ends up killing Dr. Ramsey in self-defense. Dr. Swan leaves his colleague's corpse with the other dead patients and seals the pit. 20 years later, a beautiful amnesia patient named Jane Doe arrives at the mental health facility. Her arrival coincides with an earthquake that cracks open the dead pit. The undead Dr. Ramsey and his legion of undead patients are freed, and now the evil doctor will continue his experiments. This film was released at the tail end of the 80s horror dystopia trend, and contains many of the genre's atypical characteristics, such as revealing and skimpy outfits, terrible hairstyles, and unnecessary backstories. The script seems half-baked, and there's a bit of an editing problem. Maybe if they cut down the film by some 15 minutes, it wouldn't have featured on this list. But fortunately, they didn't do that, and gave us this masterpiece of nonsense. Cheryl Lawson, who plays Jane Doe, is seen in her underwear for the majority of the movie. Was it a part of her treatment? Do scanty dresses aid sleep? We guess the answer lies with director Brett Leonard. However, Miss Lawson was the only saving grace for the film. In one of the scenes, she explains how her memories were stolen and not lost.
The surgeon who took it is here. He was outside my window last night.
Apparently, someone operated on her to crack open her skull and literally cut out her memories. They must have used a unique pair of memory-cutting scissors. Nevertheless, such sloppy dialogue is enough to provide a riot of laughs. And if not, there's a fair amount of gore and nudity too. Mystics in Bali, 1981. Catherine Keen travels from America to Bali so that she can research and write a book about voodoo and black magic. Her boyfriend, Mahendra, introduces Catherine to a witch known as the Queen of the Lake, or Layak. Layak is an Indonesian mythological figure which is basically a flying head with internal organs like a heart, liver, and lungs hanging around it. The witch promises to teach Catherine about Layak magic, but instead changes her into a Layak. Catherine becomes a flying vampire and seeks pregnant women so that she can suck their babies out of the womb. It's now up to the local holy men to join forces and stop this oriental evil. Mystics in Bali is an Indonesian film. Are you wondering what it's doing in the list of the terminally bad but great films? There's no other way to describe it. The film is a whole different kind of different. It's a mythological horror with added gore. Gore that's gruesome and will gross you out, but will also leave you laughing because the special effects are so ridiculous. There's a flying head with a necklace made up of a heart, lungs, and a liver that floats around in the air committing feticide in a horrid manner. The film is ridiculously terrible, but intriguing. We believe it's fun to compare these Asian vampires with our very own Hollywood movies. Do they kill the same? Do they die the same? It's so intriguing. Nightmare Weekend, 1986. An ingenious professor builds a computer program that's supposed to help humanity by altering the evil behavioral traits in test subjects. However, sometimes the computer program doesn't work as intended and magically transforms the test subject's personal objects into silver metal pinballs. The professor's assistant, Julie Clingstone, sends 2 thieves to steal the program, but they're stopped by a talking puppet which can somehow also turn things into pinballs. His daughter uses the machine like a video game and controls real cars and objects in the outside world. Somehow, the machine later transforms 3 college girls into killing machines or zombies or something. We're not entirely sure what they are, but they kill on command for Julie. Also, the college girls like to take off their clothes, and they like it a lot. Meanwhile, the professor's daughter realizes she's in love after a heart-to-heart conversation with a talking puppet named George. This movie is a big bag of laughter and facepalm moments. The stark difference between the intent of the film and the result is just criminally huge. The sex scenes are scattered throughout, but they've been filmed in a manner that's far from erotic by what feels like an amateur adult film director. Then there's the computer, which talks through the absurd hand puppet called George in a ridiculous robotic voice.
And how should I dress?
Boys who like girls, in dresses.
There's absolutely no sign of a storyline or script, but 20 minutes into the film, you won't even need one. We wonder if the filmmakers even watched it in post-production. Even if they did watch it, they probably didn't want to mess around further than they already did. This film comes with a million flaws, but it also finds its place in this list and our hearts, purely because these flaws have made it memorable and enjoyable. Killer Workout, 1987. Rhonda Johnson owns an aerobics gym where some grisly murders are happening with a deadly weapon of choice: the ever-feared and dangerous safety pin. The gym has aerobic exercisers who have great-looking bodies. Men are super bulked up and women are just as hot as the sun. Yet, for some reason, they continue to work out at the gym despite knowing that a serial killer is taking out the members. Detective Morgan has been put in charge of solving these murder cases, but looking at his attitude and style, it's doubtful he can even throw out a parking ticket. As the film proceeds, more bodies start piling up, and everyone's a suspect. For the international release, the film was renamed as Aerobicide. The craziest thing is that despite occupied body bags being frequently drawn out of the gym, the aerobic exercisers are indifferent. It seems that their exercise must go on. 10 points to the writer for the innovative kill weapon, though. Who'd have thought that a giant safety pin would one day become a weapon of mass destruction in a gym?
Goodbye, Tommy.
But then, we shouldn't forget that it's a David A. Pryor movie, and with him comes suspense, violence, and nudity. The goddess-shaped women with near-perfect assets have raunchy sex with muscular men, and yes, some of them get killed. Killer Workout, aka Aerobicide, has the potential of being a queen of one-star wonders with its sleazy acting and shabby screenplay.
This is from your senior partner, Mr. Erickson?
In one of the scenes, a man hands a blank piece of paper to a woman, supposed to be a letter from her senior partner. we are not even kidding.
You'd kill yourself for her. You love her that much, don't you?
David, fight back! No!
Death Spa, 1989. Michael owns a high-tech health club ravaged by a series of killings. The murders are caused by life-taking saunas, dumbbells, exercise machines, and other such deadly devices. An evil force has taken over the technology of the gym. These murders started taking place right after Michael's wife, Catherine, committed suicide. Catherine's brother holds Michael responsible for the death, and Michael will have to prove his innocence and put an end to the murders, or else he will lose all of his clients. This is one of those films whose very title is enough to prepare you for what's to come, the impending doom which you have subjected yourself to. However, this doom is like a thrill ride. You know the pain, but you like the pain. No human or animal is possessed in the film because writers James Bartroff and Mitch Paradise thought it better to let the ghost possess a bunch of exercise machines. And why not? It's an 80s horror B movie.
The computer had nothing to do with the accident.
That system of yours means more to you than people's lives, doesn't it?
This system is a marvel.
Back then, almost anything gave a good bang for your buck, but this is exactly the kind of film that you need to help escape the vicious cycle of boring work weeks. Death Spa and Killer Workout are part of a subgenre called Workout Will Kill You, which a few horror directors somehow became way too obsessed with. It actually gave them a fair opportunity to show scantily clad women being killed or making love. It's still a mystery as to why they don't term the movies as comedies. Death Spa might lack an original or decent storyline and may contain significant camera issues, but there's a lot to love. What it doesn't lack is gore and visceral action, some awful music, pretty people who are stupid, bad hairstyles and women in shorts, shorter shorts, and no shorts.
You're having a nightmare.
Oh my God. I thought you were
Dead?
The Horror Show, 1989. Detective Lucas McCarthy finally apprehends a dreaded serial killer named Meat Cleaver Max. Max is tried and sent to the electric chair. To everyone's surprise at the execution, Max endures more than the normal amount of electricity, and he finally dies when his body is burned due to the continuous shocks. Just before passing away, Max promises revenge on the detective.
Max Jenke is not dead.
No.
A parapsychologist tells Detective McCarthy that Max's soul is still trapped on Earth, and he will only survive if the soul is destroyed. Later, Max's spirit comes back from the realm of darkness to haunt the detective and his family, who have just moved to a new house. The Horror Show is another unintentional masterpiece in terms of genre and theme. It tries to be a supernatural horror, but ends up being a slasher film. It's undoubtedly fun to watch a detective increasingly paranoid due to hallucinations, but he is relentlessly fighting the ghost of a crazy serial killer.
I told you I'd be back.
The horror and scares become fewer and further between as the film proceeds, and the plot becomes predictable. Lance Henriksen as Detective Lucas McCarthy saves the film, but it's definitely not enough. The practical effects gradually become more rib-tickling instead of spine-chilling. One great thing about the movie is that director James Isaac decided to show the real face and voice of Meat Cleaver Max, played by Brian James. The film begins on a very intense note and tries to maintain the same energy through the runtime. This pursuit of engrossment feels ridiculous, but is somehow engaging at the same time. The viewer may begin to wonder why they started watching this film in the first place, yet they won't be able to escape its arresting appeal factor.
Sorry, pal.
Vamp, 1986. Keith and AJ are friends who wish to find a stripper in order to get into the fraternity on their college campus. They take the car of a rich but lonely kid, Duncan, who insists that he comes with them. The three search through nightclubs and ultimately find a stripper in the more shady part of town, an elegant dancer named Katrina. When AJ goes to meet her in the dressing room, she seduces and kills him with a fatal bite on the neck. Keith and Duncan get worried about AJ and seek the help of a waitress named Amaretto to try and find him. By this point, AJ has transformed into a vampire, but retains his humanity and pledges to save Keith. Now, AJ will have to fight against his new vampire friends to do so.
Well, don't everybody thank me all at once.
Vamp is a good movie, but doesn't know what to do with itself. There are unwarranted twists and some surplus suspense. Writer-director Richard Wenk has an instinctive aptitude for quirky humor and one-liners, which is quite visible in Vamp.
Tell me your real name.
This isn't exactly the time I had in mind. I thought maybe you...
But Wenk invests too heavily in strange side characters that keep popping up throughout the movie. Vamp fluctuates between light-hearted fun and gruesome chaos, sitting beautifully somewhere in the middle of comedy and horror. A special mention must be given to the jolly relationship between a human kid and his newly transformed vampire friend. As bizarre and unorthodox as it may seem, we assure you that it's one of the best things about the film. Grace Jones plays the seductive Queen Vampire of Egypt, for which she bagged the Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actress.
Take a break for a minute. Cut the machinery.
Superstition, 1982. The alcoholic Reverend George Leahy moves to a time-worn house in New England with his wife Melinda and children, Anne, Cheryl, and Justin. The house was witness to several inexplicable murders before the family moved in. After the Leahy family moves in, evil and deadly things begin to take place. The house is home to a revenge-seeking witch that will stop at nothing to massacre the Leahy family. Reverend David Thompson and Inspector Sturgis join forces to ward off the evil witch once and for all. But she's one mean witch who doesn't know how to back down. The late 70s and early 80s saw a significant rise in the number of slasher films that were masked as horror movies and put in front of the audience. Superstition is one such film by director James W. Robertson, starring James Houghton, Albert Salmi, and Lynn Carlin. However, we're not saying this in a negative way. With great finesse and an original style, Robertson has combined gore and slashing with elements of supernatural horror. Yes, the script is floppy and the screenplay is full of goofs which will make the runtime bloated. Maybe if they slashed a few of the over-explanatory scenes from the film, like they slashed the evil old witch's victims, the film might have gained a few more positive reviews from critics. But then, this was not a movie made for critics. It was made to appease and thrill the audience, and Superstition does so with flair.
Shouldn't have killed her.
Pale Blood, 1990. Michael Fury is a European who comes to Los Angeles to investigate a series of dark and mysterious murders. The uniqueness of these murders lies in the creepy fact that the victims were drained of their blood, every drop of it. Fury hires a private investigator called Laurie to help with his search. Fury later finds out that he himself is a vampire, but that's not the only secret. Laurie is hiding something too. The film was released in 1990, but we have chosen to include it on this list of wonderful one-star horrors.
Blood. I'm seeing blood. Sometimes I think I'm going mad.
Because it screams 80s horror louder than the victims of bloodthirsty vampires. Pale Blood tried to do something artistically original with its story. Vampires have been used in horror flicks probably since the very first vampire walked the face of the earth. But writer and director V.V. Dashan Shu took this concept to a new level altogether. The story can be summed up simply as vampire versus serial killer, but the film's several twists make it a worthy watch. There's moderate gore and nudity, yet the audience is kept engaged due to the various dream sequences and hallucinations, as well as the brilliant camera work of cinematographer Jerry Lively, who captures the nightlife of Los Angeles in a very realistic manner. But what if we told you that a hefty chunk of the film was shot in Hong Kong and not Los Angeles? That's how great the camera work is. There's nothing extraordinarily bad about the film, except that it's essentially a low-budget B movie. We think it would have done much better if the producers had a few more dollars to spare. If you're a horror fan, you will have an easy time appreciating the dark humor and atmosphere of this little-known beauty. Sorority House Massacre, 1986. Bobby is a young boy who kills his whole family, except his younger sister Beth, who survives by hiding in the basement. Bobby is later caught and sent to a mental asylum. Many years later, Beth starts living in a sorority house, but due to a memory block, she doesn't realize that the sorority house is in fact her old house where the massacre happened. Over time, her memories start to come back and bring with them the trauma she faced as a child. Meanwhile, Bobby somehow feels her presence in the house and escapes the asylum to finish the job. He starts by killing an old man to steal his hunting knife. This movie is a Halloween ripoff in more ways than one.
Beth, please help me.
1, 2, 3.
Please help me.
1, 2, 3.
But it still stands out as a better slasher flick than it should have been. The best aspects for us were the elements of the psychic thriller subgenre embedded in the conventional slasher framework. The detailing of the character of Beth is rather intriguing, and the backstory is well crafted. The twisted killer is unique and certainly not similar to the maniac you see in usual slasher flicks. Yes, he does break out of a mental ward after magically sensing his sister's presence miles away. Don't ask us how. We're simply stating the fact. The gore element has been toned down more than the title suggests, and the performances are decent for a low-budget horror flick from the 80s. There are parts that are mildly amusing, but we have to say that this movie will still manage to scare you enough that you'll want to keep the lights on when you go to sleep. Angela O'Neill, the actress who played Beth, was reluctant to shed her clothes for the role and even threatened to walk off the set. The makers complied, and eventually she played her part to perfection, sans the nudity.
So, when we meet again.
Demon Wind, 1990. The film begins in 1931 with a body being burned on a cross. A woman called Regina is at her farm trying to barricade the door. The door is a gateway to the underworld, and demons are trying to enter the world through it.
And now, my pig, you die.
After many failed attempts, she's killed by her husband George, who has now transformed into a demon. The film fast-forwards around 60 years. Regina and George's son has committed suicide, and their grandson travels to their farm. With him are a few of his friends and his girlfriend, Elaine. Demon Wind writer and director Charles Philip Moore wanted to make a horror film, but ended up making a comedy.
Oh man, I think we're in trouble.
I think you're right.
There's a scene where a man's girlfriend transforms into a ball of fire and explodes, and his reaction to it is that of a little kid dropping his ice cream cone. The level of indifference to grave situations is generously shared amongst all the stars. As for the plot, it has more loopholes than a sponge. As soon as you build the courage to make some sense of what's happening, the film will throw you in a strange direction. You start to feel lost, and in the underworld, that's how the demon wind blows you away. Yet the film is a treat for gore lovers, with zombie-like demons hanging around the place and killing anything that comes in their way. Then there are ancient baby ghosts and a mysterious fog. Things just happen in this film. They are inexplicable and sudden, and it seems no serious thought was ever given to the screenplay. The film starts to feel like a laughable farce or a spoof of 80s horror flicks. These little mistakes are the reason this film becomes a must-watch. We watched it once for the purpose of reviewing it, and we're still in the zone. Demon Wind successfully blew our minds. Just maybe not in the way they intended.
And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks everyone.